Welcome to the Orthodontics in Summary podcast, where Farouk brings you the key points and understanding of orthodontic webinars, conferences, and papers in a concise podcast with your host, Farouk Ahmed.
Hello all. Today's lecture is entitled Simplified Orthodontic Biomechanics with Double Slot Bracket. This was by Hamid from Brazil. So what is it? Well, it's a new bracket, a metal bracket with two conventional slots arranged vertically. And each bracket slot has a different size. There's a contour clip to achieve ligation. So how does it work? Well, these two slots, one is incisal and one is gingival on this bracket. The incisal slot is passive ligated and the gingival slot is actively ligated. And this is achieved through the contouring of the slot gate. Well, what are the advantages of having such an arrangement? Well, the presenter described how it ticks both boxes for people who prefer both types of ligation. For the incisive slot, the self-ligating one, there is greater play of space between the slot and the archwire, therefore less friction, but also just a different way of working for the people who like that. The latter is of an active ligating process, and for the people who prefer that, it gives them better rotational control, specifically at the end of treatment. The second advantage of this new bracket is that both different slots have different slot dimensions. So the incisive passive ligating slot has an 022 by 028 slot, which allows greater physiological force and variation in arch wires. Now the gingival active self-ligating slot is a 018 by 030 slot, which is much smaller. This allows a quicker progression to allow torque control to take place earlier on in treatment. Now there are some advantages with respect to mechanics. The presenter spoke about the advantage when it comes to anchorage. There's less of a requirement for TADs and TPAs. And he gave the example of when this can be used. For example, an impacted palatally displaced canine. We can, through this bracket, have a rigid anchorage through a 1925 stainless steel wire in the incisive passive ligating slot. Then in the gingival slot, where it's active ligating, we can have an 014, even a 1622 NiTi wire to allow alignment of the canine. And we can have these mechanics happening due to the incisive slot being so large, allowing for a 1925 stainless steel to support our anchorage. Another advantage is that there are less auxiliaries required, with less springs, utility arch wires being needed. And he also described other brackets which have auxiliary slots built in, and they tend to have a much smaller slot size and are far less versatile than having the dimensions in this particular bracket. Now he gave the example of an over-erupted upper first permanent molar. Here it can be intruded using a base 1725 stainless steel arch wire, but most crucially the auxiliary wire, or the one going to the gingival slot here, can be a 1622 NiTi, allowing both alignment of that over-erupted upper first permanent molar, but also having some torque control of the process as well. Therefore less likely to require TADs or intrusion springs. He also spoke about the versatility of being able to change between one slot and the other. He gave the example of the deep bite with over-erupted upper incisors, and they can be intruded through simply having the anterior brackets in the most incisive slot, so the self-ligating slot, which is passive, and having the posterior teeth in the gingival slot, or the active self-ligating slot, allowing intrusion, in effect mimicking an anterior intrusion bend. He spoke about the archwire sequence, so this was interesting. He would start off with an 012 copper NiTi in one slot, then he would go to an 012 copper NiTi in both slots, progressing to an 016 NiTi, 1622 NiTi, and finishing in a 1725 stainless steel in the 018 030 slot. Now there are issues with this process, and he was quite clear to describe them. Friction could be an issue when it comes to sliding mechanics. He expressed such as there. Overall, I felt it was an interesting concept. The presenter was clear to state that it is new, de novo, and there are still some challenges to work through, and look forward to seeing more research on this bracket. Stay tuned and please do subscribe to Orthodontics in Summary.